You talked about new writers in your magazine, so that was going to be my next question about what advice or what can you offer to the new writers of the 21st century, may it be old, young, or whatever. What do you have to tell them in regarding to writing?
You know, what happens if you go out today, and I go into, a lot of schools, I go into prisons, what you'll find immediately, especially say we go into elementary school, a teacher will come up and say, oh, I have a young student here, and he or she is really into poetry. Okay, and the young kid will come up maybe a little shy and they'll say this, oh, can I recite my poem for you? Okay, and so what happens, they'll recite the poem. We live in a time right now where spoken word is extremely popular. Okay, what I have to tell people who are developing the poets is that we have the different traditions. We have the oral tradition and we have the lyric tradition. Very important for writers to learn how to write a poem on the page. Okay, it's very important to learn, just like how if you're a musician, you want to know how to read music. Okay, you want to be able to read notes. Okay, and that's very important in terms of mastering your craft. Okay, so what I look for in terms of young writers is first you have to have a passion and desire in terms of a love for the language. Okay, you know that you can go through different stages in your life where, oh yeah, I'm really into writing here because everybody else is doing it. Or you're going to be writing 5, 10, 15, maybe not. Okay, but right now it's popular. You get up, you're sharing your work, and everybody's doing it, so it's cool. But if you're really making that commitment, then you're saying, okay, I'm expressing myself. Am I expressing myself in the best way possible? Okay, who were writers before I started writing? Who was here before I was born? And so all of a sudden now, you're reading other work, and you might say, okay, I'm African American. What does that mean in terms of poetry? Who are the other great African American poets? And then you might say, wow, okay, I know the African American. Who's in China? I mean, who's the best Chinese writer? And all of a sudden you realize because you have a love for poetry, that love is pulling you in a lot of different directions, and all of a sudden you're sitting down reading maybe a translation of a poem that was in Japanese or Arabic, and all of a sudden your whole life is expanded and grown because that's what art, that's what literature does. But if you are going to be an artist or a poet, it means that you undertake what I consider a spiritual undertaking, and you have to realize, okay, I'm going to commit myself to being on this path. So along with wanting to be a writer, you have to read. Okay? You have to read, and you have to have a love for books and for language. That's what goes into it. You just can say, okay, give me a mic, let me read a poem to you. Okay, that's nice, but that's not going to make it if you're talking about what it means to be a writer. Okay? Then we haven't even got into the power of what you're doing. Okay? You could write something here right now that somebody could pick up using a speech or put it out there social media, and all of a sudden you're changing people's lives because they say, yeah, I read that poem and I want to go hit somebody in the head. Right? And so all of a sudden now somebody, authorities, looking for you because you wrote the poem. And so you can say, well, I was angry and I wrote that. You're responsible. You see the power of language? You are responsible. You wrote that poem, and now what happened? In some countries, they will come for you and your family because you wrote just a poem. But that poem had a meaning and a message, and it inspired, just like magic, whoosh. Okay, people were not thinking about certain things, and then you took your poem and instilled certain ideas in their heads. You are responsible now for their actions, okay? And poetry and language can do that. That's why in some societies, the first people they round up are the people with the cameras, I'm just joking,
wow,
and the people writing the poems.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be, I guess they're going to round me up 3 times. I write, I film.
Right, you in the top 10 category.
Goodness gracious. Okay, so in that instance, this is Black History Month. There's a lot of black talent out there, and we chose you this day to be here at Busboys and Poets because we want to know what's your business with us. Well, your student of yours asked. I'm going to tell you a former student that she had in grad school set out and asked Ethelbert, What is his relationship with busboys and poets?
That's like people used to ask me what was my relationship with the Washington Post at one time, because they say, I thought I pick up the Post, I always see you in the Post. But I think in terms of busboys, first of all, it begins with friendship. Andy Shala, who's the owner of Busboy, is probably one of my closest friends. At one time, we would make sure that we would sit down every Monday and talk, okay? Talk about our lives, talk about projects. There are many things in terms of which we collaborate on. We also represent some of the same organizations. I mean, some people don't realize that Andy Shala is on my board, and that I chair the board of the Institute for Policy Studies, which is a major think tank here in Washington. And Andy at one time was my treasurer. So when you look at our collaboration, you know, we are working for some, in this case, the same organization. To some extent, we share the same politics. I remember when Busboys and Poets was just an idea. If I'm not mistaken, when it opened at 14th and B and still had paper in the windows, the first program that was done in Busboys was a program that me and Wendy Rieger, anchor women on NBC, we did the first program in there for Andy before they even really opened up. But Andy and I go back a couple years ago, just a couple years ago. It's kind of funny because I gave Andy the idea of running for mayor of DC. That came out of one of our breakfast meetings. And so I was the culprit behind that. But, you know, it's friendship, you know. Many times when he was thinking about opening up a restaurant, you know, he bounced some ideas off me. Recently he had a busboy open up in Brooklyn, another open in Tacoma Park. Sometimes on a Saturday, you know, he'd call me up, we'd ride around to each site while they were making them, you know, get feedback in terms of the colors of the walls and stuff like that. So it's a very deep friendship. I think in a number of places, I've helped him in terms of getting to know other people. One person who's... So
not to interrupt, but while my mind is still fresh, did he already came with that idea of having, celebrating Black art and poetry and whatnot? Or was that given to him?
Right. Andy Shala is a very conscious person, and when I say this in terms of the society that we live in, especially for people who are not African American, you know, when Andy decided to open up a Busboys and Poets on 14th and B Street, what you saw immediately was that, you know, he was very much involved in terms of what the needs of the communities was. And he ran around the corner to the Black Bank and said, okay, if I'm going to get this money, it's going to go through the Black Bank. He also created a space that if you came in, you could see yourself. Okay, and then what happened? He's not just opening up a restaurant. Okay, Busboys is more than that. It's a place where people come to a place, could have different interests and politics, but by sitting down and breaking bread, okay, by eating together, okay, you build a sense of community. Okay, and so, you know, to one extent, you could almost say now, because there's a number of busboys, it's not just a restaurant or a cultural place. It's almost like it's a movement, you know, and I think it's been one that has really changed this city. And I think back in terms of my own life, there are a couple of people that I met at Busboys who are probably my best friends in my life. And if this place was not there, I wouldn't have met them.
So did you have anything to do with the aesthetics here?
No. Only thing happens is
let me pan around. You can still talk.
Only thing I remember, you know, because Andy, when he was opening a restaurant for us in the beat, there was a lot of discussion about what to name the restaurant, and there was some people who didn't want it to be named Busboys and Poets because they said we're not busboys, we're men or whatever. But you know, at the same time, I think that the naming in Busboys and Poets was very, very important because at that time. You know, the whole thing, spoken word was very big, very popular. Many young people, if you look up at, you know, when Busboys opened about 10 years ago, the lines were out into the street the night that there was open mic and people reading. I mean, people would come from like North Carolina to read poetry at Busboys and Poets. And that says that a lot was going on. And I think if we were social historians looking back at why it became so popular, I think it had a lot to do with Andy being from Iraq, opening up a place when the war was going on. You know, if you look back, we had a number of protests against the Iraq war. If you look at what happened after the protests, people all went back to Busboys to eat, you know. So, you know, you could go in there and see, you know, Cornel West or somebody in there. And what happened? That place, that back room at 14th and B became a meeting place. Okay. And that became very important in terms of social movement.
So let's take a good little tour.
Okay, now this here is the next one. A key thing is that when people, you know, talking about Andy's not just a restaurant owner, he's also an artist. Okay, so when you go into some of his restaurant, you see Andy's murals. Okay, this is a mural in which, once again, he has a certain theme. At 14th and B, the room back that's named after Langston Hughes. Okay.
Okay.
The title.
This is the Langston.
No, this is the
room?
County Cullen room. This is
Okay.
County Cullen. You see, because what happens is
Okay,
you
let
go
me
back.
pan over here. You come
if
with
you go
me.
back to why his name was important, is because in the 1920s when Langston's career got started, he was a busboy over at the Wardman Hotel.
Okay.
And what happened is that the great poet Virgil Lindsay was reading that evening, and Langston, being Langston, slipped some poems under Virgil Lindsay's, plate, and Virgil Lindsay read those poems, to great acclaim. And what happens is that the media showed up and wanted to get a picture of Langston. And there's a famous picture of Langston holding up a tray as the busboy's poet.
So we have some art out here. A pretty interesting setup, and you have your big head. What you call.
What happened is that these art, what he's done in all the busboys, it's been a gallery for many local artists. So it's not just a restaurant, but a place where people can display their work and even sell their work.
Okay. So this is so apropos for, like I mentioned before,
Right.
the Black History Month.
Sure, and
So let's walk over to your
Okay.
big head.
all right, okay,
Show the audience.
okay, right, and I tell you what happened with that. Is
So,
I call it a big head because there's actually two. There's one that's here, that's publicly displayed, and then there's another big head that's in my closet at home. Okay, so there's this one here. Now, the artist is Pete Petrine, who is the brother of a good friend of mine who I met when she was like in high school. Okay, and this was actually a project for him when he was like in graduate school. And he first displayed them up in New York because that's what he's going to school in New York. And so what's been really nice is that he gave these heads to me as a gift, and I've been very close to him and his family. So, when I look at, what he was able to do, I'm very honored about it. And then it just happens is that I had a book party at Busboys and Poets a couple of years ago, and we had the big head, And,
now, do you have a replica of this
no,
big
I
head?
got a second one.
Oh, at home?
Yeah, I got another one. That's a little same size, but it's a little different.
Oh.
So there's two of them.
So it's two big heads.
Two big heads. Right.
Okay. That's interesting.
And the place that wanted the other one was University of Houston University of Houston, Victoria. It's another place that said that.
Oh, there's three big heads?
No, they wanted the other one, but I haven't given them that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the other one's still in my house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So one last question, and the readers and the audience wants to know, what does Black History Month mean to you?
Black History Month now has taken on new meanings for me. I used to think of Black History Month because, opens up with, Langston Hughes' birthday. But my grandson was born February 7th, Super Bowl Sunday. So now I know when I look at Black History Month, this is a black boy that's been born in this month, so it takes on special meaning. It also took on meaning because February was also Valentine's Day, and when we talk about black life and black love, that's extremely important. But to me, in terms of knowing the importance of African American history and what Carter G. Woodson was trying to do, there's still a need for us to know our history. There's still a need for us to pass on the stories and the ideas of what it means to struggle, what it means to be free. Those are things that we take for granted. But there's so much black history that still has not been recorded and documented. And the key thing is this: every day, black people are making history, so it doesn't stop.
Very well. Well, quiet on the set, thanks you.
Okay, thank you.
For having us.
Okay, don't be too quiet on the set.
No, we thank you for
Okay,
giving us
well,
the
thank
time
you.
of your day
Thank you
and your
very
life to share
Okay.
information that is
Thank you.
necessary. And we will definitely make sure that we will be advocates of the arts.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, and thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Let's